Hey everyone, Six String Supplies. Today we're going to be rewiring this Epiphone Les Paul using push-pull pots to coil split the humbuckers. Okay, so as always, I'll give you a very quick overview of the equipment and components that I'm going to be using. So, like I say, we're going to be doing a Les Paul coil split setup using the CTS push-pull pots. These do confuse quite a few people, so I'll just give a quick overview, but obviously we'll talk through it in more detail as we go through. So these 6 nibs here, they represent the normal 6 solder points that you get on a classic or typical looking push-pull pot. But on these new CTS, I say new, they're quite old now, but on these CTS ones, they're actually, it's more of a printed circuit board. So these are all numbered or lettered, and then they connect to the relevant hole with its equal letter or number. So for example, if you were to, on a normal push-pull pot, if you were to solder a wire to 0.3, I know this is upside down, but to this knob here, this little nib, instead of connecting it to the nib, you put it into its equivalent hole. Likewise, if you had to join a couple together, like for phase or series switching, instead of having a wire going from 3 to 2 diagonally or 1 to 4 diagonally, you'd do it in the holes there. So you just have a little jumper wire connecting the holes together. So that's that. We're going to be using 2 of these, one for each volume control. 2 normal 500k CTS pots. These are actually the TVT or the true vintage taper version. It's just a standard pot basically. It's just got a slightly different taper. 2 of these Orange Shops 0.022 UF capacitors. Very typical for single coil use. I was thinking of using 0.047 as we will be splitting the coils, but I can always change them over later. We'll see how we do. And as most of you know, I do love a bit of rubber tubing in my videos, so we'll be using some of that. As for the equipment, it hasn't changed in a while now, but we've got the Hakko soldering station. This is rapid online, lead-free solder. As you can see, it's got AG 3.9%, so there's a bit more silver than normal. Tinned copper wires 0.9mm. I don't know what gauge that is equates to, sorry. And some brass shavings just to keep the solder tip clean. As for the pickups themselves, we've come across these in another recent video, past video. It's the House of Tone pickups based in Chester, in the northish region of the UK. This is their Tru PAF. It's been reviewed by various magazines. I'll put a few links in the description below. They're available in the vintage style braid, the classic braided wire, or for those that like a few different switching options, they're also available in 4 conductor wire, which is why we're going to be using these. So just a quick note, if you are looking to split your pickups, you do need pickups that have the 4 conductor wires. They also come with a little book, little spec book, a bit of card just explaining what's what. So you can see there the neck, it's got the values 7.2 and 7.4, but very helpfully it does actually tell you what each color wire does. So you got the black, which is the hot signal, the white and the red are the coils. So in normal operation, they're the 2 that you'd twist together, solder and tape off, and the green and the bare, they get grounded. Now that is, fortunately for us and for this video and for many others watching, that combination is exactly the same as Seymour Duncan. So if you are watching this and you want to try this at home, the way we're going to be doing it works for House of Tone pickups and Seymour Duncan, and I'm sure 1 or 2 others as well. It does get confusing because most pickup manufacturers in the world use the exact same 4 colours, but they are all in a different order. So for Seymour Duncan, the black wire is the hot signal wire, which we'll be using in this video. But if it's a Gibson humbucker, for example, they've changed over the years, but typically it's the red wire, which is the hot signal. So anyway, that's that. We're just going to, oh yeah, also got a template. Now we started selling these on our website for not very much. I think they're £4. They're pre-cut templates into a whole various range of models. The idea being, obviously, you don't want to be doing this inside your guitar, so we're going to wire it outside in a template, and then we're going to load it in a bit later. This, by the way, is just 3mm, was it 2mm? I think it's 3mm thick acrylic. So there you go. We're just going to load the components into the template. We're going to start off by doing the main 4 controls, the main harness itself, put all the capacitors in, get that wired up, and then we'll connect the pickups inside the guitar. Okay, so as I say, I've got the pots in there, so I'm going to have my 2 push-pull pots as volume controls and the normal CTS pots as tone. I've actually just taken one of the pots back out again, just to explain what we're going to do here. So just like you would with any other volume control, we need to ground this terminal here. Now normally on the normal pot you'd bend the, like on the tone pot, you'd bend the lug onto the casing and solder it in place, or use a jumper wire. So obviously we can't bend it back, so we're going to use a jumper wire just soldered into that eyelet there, and we're going to ground it to the side casing like that. So I'm using the tinned copper that we showed you at the beginning. Various ways you can do it. I just like to keep it there in place, use a little bit of tape just to stick the wire down. And then solder it into the eyelet. Just like that. Let it cool for a couple of seconds before you rip the tape off. If not, if it doesn't set properly, you're just gonna disrupt it. Just gonna snip it to length. This next bit doesn't need doing. I do it out of habit and have done it since day one. So I'm just gonna cover that wire, that naked wire, with some tubing. Again, there's no real reason for it. Just shrink it down with a heat gun. And then we're going to solder that down onto the pot casing. Just going to turn it down a little bit, the temperature. Just like that. So that's the lug of the volume control grounded. The other thing we're going to need to do, you need to have a common route to ground on the switching itself. So typically you solder this eyelet here, this nib, number 3, that one will get grounded. So like I say, as it's a printed circuit board, we're going to have a wire going for number 3. I'm going to run it through the back and solder it to this side of the casing instead. So I'm just going to feed the wire through. again, if you're using tape or however you're doing it, just tape it in place. See, this wire here, I've pushed it through the front, it's going around the back, and I'm going to solder it in place there, but I'm just using tape to hold it in place as I solder from the front. Just like that. Snip it to length. And again, not needed, but I do it out of habit. I'm just going to run some tubing down just to stop anything else coming into contact with what is essentially the ground. Trim the tubing. Okay, let's bend that back into place. So we need to do exactly the same for the other volume control, and we'll come back in a sec. Okay, so with both the volume push-pulls wired up appropriately, we're going to move on to finishing the rest of the main controls. Just before I do though, you'll notice that I haven't soldered this wire to the pot casing yet, but I have on the neg volume. That's simply because just before we put everything else together, we're going to be connecting the 4 pots together with a ground wire, and I'm going to solder it there as well, so I'll do both connections at the same time. Right then, so moving on to the capacitors. This is going to be like a typical Les Paul setup. I guess what you call the modern wiring, as opposed to the very popular 50 style wiring. I'll save that for a different video. So your capacitor is going to go to the middle lug of the tone control. I've just got some yellow tubing on there just to stop that lead coming into contact with the pot casing, which is the ground, or will be the ground anyway, rendering it useless. So just going to solder that in place. Let it cool. And then the other lead is going to go to ground, so we'll just put it on the top of the pot. So I'm just going to heat that area up. Okay, and then we'll do exactly the same with the neck controls. So same again, put the cap into the middle, one end of the cap to the middle tone or the tone control. Just like so. Give it a trim if it's got a bit sticking out. And same again, we're just going to put the other end to the ground, So I'm just going to heat up the area for a little bit. Get the pot hot. All good. Okay, so that's your tone caps done. Next we're going to put a jumper wire from this volume the input of the volume control to the lug on the tone control directly opposite for both pots. So I'm going to be using some cloth wire. You can use whatever you want, whatever colour you want. Couple of lengths. It's up to you how you do this. Ultimately you just need a wire connecting the two together. I like to go a bit fancy. I know this annoys some people when you bend the wire around and say it's not necessary, but ideally you want to create the mechanical connection as well as an electrical one. Like so, exactly the same for this tone control. So yeah, like I say, you don't have to bend it around like I do. I just do it out of habit, to be honest. Sorted. And then the other end, we're going to solder to the input of the volume control. At which point it's probably easier to take it out of the template. Just like so. Now actually, when you're putting it to the volume control, I do recommend you bend it around and put it so that you've got, because you need a bit of a gap in there to be able to put your pickup in. Don't have to, obviously, it's just my style. Sorted. So we can put that back in its place now. And we're going to do exactly the same for the neck volume. Sorted. There you go, quite simple really, it's just a few connections and then you're all good to put your pickups in. Final thing you need to do just before you transfer this into your guitar is just put a ground wire connecting all 4 pots together. So we'll go ahead and do that and then we'll get to the exciting bit of attaching the pickups. Okay, so now I've got the harness here. Before I drop it into the actual control cavity, I'm actually going to install the pickups on top here, so you guys get a better view, and I've got a cloth here just to protect the finish from any potential burns or solder splash onto the finish. Okay, so you've got both my pickups installed, the wires running through down to the cavity, and like I say, these are house tone pickups, but the colour configuration is exactly the same as Seymour Duncan. So to do the coil split, we're going to take the red and the white wires, we're going to twist them together, and we're going to tin them to solder them together basically, and then they're going to go to this hole here, C2, on your neck volume control. So out of the 6 pins on a typical wiring diagram on the pins, it will say the middle one there on the left hand side. It could say the one on the right hand side. They'll both do the same. So I'm going to put it in this hole here just because it's a lot easier. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that in. So you should be able to see that. Oh, apologies. Just like that, sorted. There you go. Right, so that leaves the black. Now the black wire is the hot signal. That's going to go to the input of the volume control. So that's this solder lug here where we've already attached that yellow wire from the tone pot. So we're just going to heat that solder up and drop that black wire in. Just like that. And the final 2 wires, which are the green and the black, they're twisted together and we're going to solder them to ground. So somewhere on this pot casing will do nicely. So I'm just going to put it on the side here. So somewhere along there. sorted. Right, so just to summarise, the red and the white twisted together and they've gone into C2. The black's the signal, the hot output, that's gone into the input, the volume control, and the green and the black have been twisted and gone to ground. So you're going to do exactly the same to the bridge volume, and after that we'll move on to the switch. Right, so the pickups are in, the harness is down, installed inside the cavity. Now I'm just going to hook up the toggle switch. So I've got one of our pre-wired short frame switches for Epiphone here. Just to give you an idea, it comes with 4 wires. Black is the ground, yellow is output to the jack, so I'll put the yellow all the way through, I'll deal with that later. And the neck and there's red and blue wires here, so the red goes to the neck volume and the blue goes to the bridge. So just like on a normal Les Paul, I'll try and get in a bit closer here. Just like on a normal Les Paul, you're going to hook up your switch and jack exactly the same way. So that's to the middle lug of each respective volume control. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect all that up, and then, I don't know if you can see it on the camera here, this naked wire is the main bridge, the main ground coming from the bridge, so we're just going to solder that to the side of the pot casing. The black wire from the switch, which is the ground, we're going to put to the pot casing as well. We'll hook up the jack and then we'll string it up and test everything's working. Okay, so it's looking a little bit like spaghetti junction there, but everything's wired up as it should. I'll just give you a quick overview of what's happened. So this red wire here is the jack output for the volume control. Now that's gone to the middle lug of the neck volume. The blue wire is exactly the same, but for the bridge. So that's also gone to the middle, I'll just move all these wires, the middle terminal there. The black wire here, the cloth wire, that's the ground from the switch. So that's just gone onto the pot casing there. The yellow wire is the output to the jack, which has gone to the jack as normal. So the pickups, the other thing I've added was you can't really see, but this naked wire around the back is the ground from the main bridge. The main ground from the bridge, sorry, and that's just been soldered on to the side of the pot casing there. So all this will be available on the wiring diagram that will flash up in a sec. I'll put a link to it at the end of the video. So that's everything done. Now we're just going to put some strings on, plug it into the amp, and check out that coil split. Right, so everything's strung up, obviously, plugged into the amp as you can tell. I've got them actually from this angle. It's a beautiful Epi Les Paul. I don't know if that's bourbon burst or burnt tobacco, I've read somewhere. Anyway, very nice guitar. Everything works as expected. I'll just give you a quick rundown. So here's the neck humbucker on full. Oops, no, that's a single coil. That's the humbucker on full. So you can hear the clear difference there. Same again on the bridge. All good. So thanks very much for watching, guys. That's how you do a Les Paul coil split with push pull pots, obviously. I'm just gonna have a little noodle, and we'll see you next time.